So in this video, we're going to talk about how you can leverage your naming convention and UTM structures in order to analyze your ads performances and identify macro trends of what is working and what isn't. So hopefully you have been using the Klar D2C naming convention builder and implemented a structure like this, very clean, clear structure, what you want to track and what the options for each dimension are. And then after a while, you hopefully can run an export from Google Analytics, which looks something like that. So I have my source medium here, my campaign, my keyword, and my content. And then I also some sessions and transactions to that export. And you can do it in the custom reports section in Google Analytics. And if you have been maintaining your naming conventions well, and your team has been, implementing and using our builder for that, it should look something like that. Good thing is it doesn't only look like that in Google Analytics, but because you have been using auto tagging, also your campaign, ad set, and ad in Facebook have very clean names that exactly match the names you've been using that you have in your Google Analytics because you've been using auto tagging. And because these names are not exactly the same, we can very easily match up this data here. So I can just a copy of my GA export here, and then I can just do a simple sum if on these 3 dimensions, campaign, ad set, and ad, and now basically sum the costs from my Facebook export, and the same here for the clicks, as well as the Facebook transactions. And I have merged data from the 2 data sources on like a one-to-one basis. I can tell exactly what kind of costs and activity, ad performance, certain campaigns, ad sets, and ads had in Facebook, and match that to their GA data. Now, the very best thing now when you have very clean naming conventions is that you can break these guys up. So this is already great because you understand sort of what has been going on there, what was sold, what was advertised, what was the focus of the ad. But I talked about the magic formula in the blog article, and I implemented it in here. And now I can start breaking out the funnel position, which is sitting like a bit weirdly in the middle here, and only see, okay, these are actually all prospecting. I can break out the audience type from the ad set here, as well as the audience detail. I can also, most importantly, go into the ad parameter and break down what ad type was it, what creative type was it, what creative category was it, and have all that detail here now perfectly structured so that we can analyze it. And then I can just put a simple pivot table on top of all this data. Then we get to this data here. I've also created a couple of calculated metrics just to get to my cost per sessions, cost per order for both GA attribution and Facebook attribution. In case you have never done that, go to the calculated fields here, and I've already created them. So here, actually I have to have a cost per order here. So I basically just entered from the fields the cost divided by transactions, and then it gives me my cost per order. So like I said before, I can go in here, I can drop in the campaign name, and as well as the ad, I can very quickly see, okay, from both GA data as well as Facebook data, what did like each campaign or each ad cost me, drive in revenue. And that's all nice. And I can sort of see, hey, this ad here had a cost per order of 10 in Facebook and 16 in GA. So that was probably a pretty good ad, and that worked pretty well. Now, where this is still a bit lacking is for me trying to understand what actually drove that performance, right? On like a single ad, it's very difficult to make, or drive conclusions as to what was the driver of that performance. But luckily, we now have our tracking maintained over a longer period of time. So we can actually kick out these high-level parameters here and look at some of the different dimensions we now broken down using the magic formula. And the first thing I always would do, and I always recommend you to do, is to get the funnel position in here, just because performance and what works is just completely different based on the funnel position, which we will see in a second. Now I can go in here and say, okay, let's look at the audience type. Okay, Just going to zoom in a bit more. Now that we go into the more in-depth analysis and see, okay, I have my broad interest in lookalike audiences, and they actually all have similar spend. Their cost per order is quite similar, both for GA as well as Facebook. So like the different types of audiences don't seem to be a big driver in terms of performance. Okay, that's too bad. So with the audience detail, is there anything we can take away from that? No, also looks quite similar. These things happen. There's not money hit everywhere, but let's start looking at the ad type maybe. Okay, here things are going to look quite a bit different now. I can see now that video ads are performing significantly better in the prospecting area. So I'm paying only 21 euros per order for a video ad, and Facebook, and 13 based on Facebook attribution, but 50% more for an image. You still have a tendency also a bit in remarketing, but not as much. And you could do now next is go in here and see, okay, was this driven by some specific outlier? Was it just one thing which spent a lot of money and was just much lower than everything else, sort of driving down the average? And no, that was not really the case. They all kind of spent a bit equally. And you have this guy here who spent a bit more, but who was not sort of much cheaper than the average. So it seems to be like a real macro trend within my account that I can now use and say, okay, if I want to do prospecting ads, it should be a video. Now, let's move on and look at the next dimension, creative focus. Okay, what was in focus, a person or product? Actually, for prospecting, it doesn't make so much of a difference, but for remarketing, product seems to be a lot better in driving cheaper conversions. So again, that's something I can now go back in and look at the ads and see if there was like a specific ad or ad set that drove that. But like we have a couple of months worth of data here, so that's already a strong indication that products should be in focus in remarketing. I could say, hey, let me actually again check by audience type. So I can, let me put this one up. Okay. So yeah, it's persistent for add to cart, customers, not so much for all website custom audiences, but as soon as someone has added something to his cart, product seems to be performing better. Okay. What else do we have? We had ad type, creative focus, we had creative category. What's up with creative category? Okay, wow. Also again, big differences. Flat lays and UGC unboxing videos seem to be performing well in prospecting, whereas value proposition as well as flat lays seem to be working best for in the remarketing. Maybe I can even put that together with the creative focus now. I think right now, okay, person here is mostly a one-to-one relationship on this level. So yeah, no additional insight here because every UGC reaction unboxing video is a person and every flat lay and value prop is a product. It would have been interesting to see now how maybe a value prop, including a person, might work in the prospecting area. But we don't have any information of that, but maybe that's then worth a try and creating a test for that. Okay, next the motivator. Okay, so we had used new arrivals and social proof, and it's kind of the same for prospecting, right? But for remarketing, new arrivals seem to be performing better, which is a bit surprising. As you would say, okay, people who are closer to purchasing might need a bit more convincing, but maybe let's just add the audience type in here as well. You can see now, okay, for add to cart, it's kind of the same. Website custom audience also a bit preferring new arrivals, but specifically customers. And here it actually makes more sense again because our customers, they already bought from you. So they don't maybe need social proof so much, but they want new products. So it's not so surprising that they prefer new arrivals, but it's also good to see here that there's a real trend for prefer new arrivals for new customers as of existing customers. So I can keep that in mind when developing new ads for these people in the future. Lastly, we have the destination type. I can add, and that seems to be quite similar. There are also a bunch of other dimensions which we included in our data, which I now didn't break out specifically, but I hope this gave you sort of like a good understanding of like the power that using clean naming convention actually gives you in order not just to understand what is working on the individual ad, in the individual campaign, but really what are the trends long-term, the macro trends in your account that are actually driving performance. And if you use clean naming conventions, you can uncover those and find the big wins that are going to push your business forward. So I hope this was useful. If you have any questions around that, let me know. Otherwise, I would appreciate if you have some feedback. Thanks.